Question 1. The analysis reveals that a network engineering team is tasked with automating the deployment and configuration of new Cisco switches across multiple branch offices. They are considering different approaches to achieve this efficiently and reliably. Which of the following automation strategies best aligns with industry best practices for enterprise network solutions, emphasizing repeatability, auditability, and maintainability? Option A. Developing custom imperative scripts that execute a series of commands sequentially to configure each switch, without a mechanism for verifying the final state. Option B. Relying on manual configuration of each switch, followed by ad hoc scripting for any repetitive tasks identified during the deployment process. Option C. Implementing automation through a series of loosely coupled scripts that are executed in a specific order, with minimal error handling and no version control. Option D. Utilizing a declarative automation framework that defines the desired end state of the network devices and allows an automation engine to reconcile the current state with the desired state. Correct answer is A. Developing custom imperative scripts that execute a series of commands sequentially to configure each switch, without a mechanism for verifying the final state. Explanation. The analysis reveals a scenario where an organization is implementing network automation to improve efficiency and reduce manual configuration errors. The challenge lies in ensuring that the automation solutions adhere to Cisco's recommended best practices for enterprise solutions, specifically within the context of the 300-435 ENAUTO exam scope, which implicitly aligns with industry standards for secure and reliable network operations. The professional challenge is to select an automation approach that not only meets functional requirements, but also aligns with security, scalability, and maintainability principles, without introducing new vulnerabilities or operational complexities. The correct approach emphasizes leveraging declarative automation models and infrastructure as code (ISC) principles. This represents best professional practice because it promotes idempotency, meaning that applying the same configuration multiple times will result in the same desired state, reducing unintended side effects. ISC also facilitates version control, auditing, and collaboration, which are crucial for maintaining a stable and compliant network infrastructure. Furthermore, using well-defined APIs and standardized data models, like YANG, ensures interoperability and simplifies integration with other systems, aligning with the principles of robust and future-proof network design. This approach directly supports the exam's focus on automating Cisco enterprise solutions by promoting efficient, repeatable, and auditable network management. An incorrect approach that relies solely on imperative scripting without proper error handling or state management presents significant regulatory and ethical failures. Imperative scripts execute commands in a specific sequence, and any deviation or failure in one step can lead to an inconsistent or broken network state, potentially violating service-level agreements, SLAs, and impacting business operations. This lack of idempotency makes auditing and troubleshooting extremely difficult, increasing the risk of security misconfigurations or compliance breaches. Another incorrect approach that involves custom, undocumented automation scripts without rigorous testing or peer review introduces a high degree of technical debt and security risk. Such practices are ethically questionable as they can lead to unmanageable systems, potential data breaches, and a failure to uphold the duty of care to protect the organization's network and data. These approaches fail to align with the professional expectation of building secure, reliable, and maintainable automation solutions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough assessment of the automation goals, the existing network infrastructure, and the organization's risk tolerance. Professionals should prioritize solutions that offer transparency, auditability, and a clear path for troubleshooting and rollback. Evaluating automation tools and methodologies against established best practices, such as those promoted by Cisco for enterprise solutions, is paramount. This includes considering the security implications of automation, ensuring that credentials are managed securely, and that configurations adhere to security policies. A phased implementation approach, coupled with comprehensive testing and validation, is also a critical component of responsible automation deployment. Question 2. The performance metrics show that the new automated network provisioning system has significantly reduced deployment times, but a security audit has revealed that a misconfiguration in the automation script has inadvertently exposed sensitive customer IP address information to unauthorized internal network segments. The system administrator is aware of this exposure and has the ability to immediately correct the script. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Correct the automation script and monitor the network logs to confirm no unauthorized access occurred before considering any further action. Option B. Immediately correct the automation script to prevent further exposure and then initiate the process for notifying affected customers and relevant regulatory bodies as per legal requirements. Option C. Correct the automation script and document the incident internally for future reference, assuming no actual data exfiltration occurred. Option D. Delay correcting the automation script until a full impact assessment can be completed to avoid potential disruption to ongoing provisioning tasks. The correct answer is B. Immediately correct the automation script to prevent further exposure and then initiate the process for notifying affected customers and relevant regulatory bodies as per legal requirements. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it involves a conflict between achieving desired operational outcomes and adhering to ethical principles regarding data privacy and security. The automation solution, while improving efficiency, has inadvertently exposed sensitive customer information. The core of the challenge lies in balancing the benefits of automation with the responsibility to protect user data, a critical aspect of maintaining trust and complying with regulatory frameworks. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes immediate remediation of the security vulnerability and transparent communication with affected parties and relevant authorities. This aligns with the ethical obligation to act with integrity and to minimize harm. Specifically, in the context of U.S. regulations, this approach is mandated by frameworks such as the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, for healthcare data, the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, GLBA, for financial data, and various state-level data breach notification laws. These regulations require prompt action to secure data, investigate the breach, and notify individuals and agencies when sensitive information is compromised. Proactive disclosure and remediation demonstrate a commitment to responsible data stewardship, which is a cornerstone of professional conduct in technology. An incorrect approach that involves attempting to conceal the breach or downplaying its severity is ethically and regulatorily unacceptable. Such actions violate the principle of transparency and can lead to severe legal penalties, including substantial fines and reputational damage. For instance, under HIPAA, failure to report a breach within the stipulated time frame can result in significant penalties. Similarly, under GLBA, deceptive practices related to customer information are strictly prohibited. Another incorrect approach, which is to only fix the technical issue without notifying affected parties or regulators, fails to meet the legal requirements for data breach notification. Many regulations, such as the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, mandate notification to individuals whose personal information has been compromised, regardless of whether the technical vulnerability has been addressed. This omission can be interpreted as a failure to uphold legal obligations and a disregard for the rights of individuals whose data was exposed. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Immediate containment. Prioritize stopping the data exposure and securing the system. 2. Investigation. Conduct a thorough forensic analysis to understand the scope and cause of the breach. 3. Legal and regulatory review. Consult with legal counsel to understand reporting obligations based on the type of data exposed and the relevant jurisdictions. 4. Notification. Execute timely and accurate notifications to affected individuals and regulatory bodies as required by law. 5. Remediation and prevention. Implement permanent fixes and enhance security protocols to prevent recurrence. 6. Post-incident review. Document lessons learned and update policies and procedures. Question 3. The control framework reveals that a network engineer is tasked with automating the deployment of new firewall rules across a large enterprise network using a third-party automation platform. The platform offers significant time savings, but requires API access to the firewall management interface. The engineer is considering deploying the automation solution directly to the production environment to achieve immediate efficiency gains, without conducting a thorough security review of the platform's API usage or performing extensive testing in a non-production environment. What is the most appropriate approach to ensure both process optimization and adherence to enterprise security and regulatory guidelines? Option A. Configure the automation solution with default security settings and proceed with production deployment, prioritizing speed of implementation over in-depth security validation. Option B. Implement the automation solution in a dedicated staging environment, thoroughly test its functionality and security configurations, and conduct a comprehensive risk assessment before migrating to the production environment. Option C. Deploy the automation solution directly to the production environment to realize immediate efficiency benefits, assuming the third-party platform has undergone its own security vetting. Option D. Focus solely on the time-saving aspects of the automation platform, deferring any security reviews or testing until after the initial deployment to production. The correct answer is B. Implement the automation solution in a dedicated staging environment, thoroughly test its functionality and security configurations, and conduct a comprehensive risk assessment before migrating to the production environment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network automation where the drive for efficiency through process optimization must be balanced against the need for robust security and compliance. The professional is tasked with automating a critical network function, but the chosen automation tool introduces potential vulnerabilities. The challenge lies in identifying and mitigating these risks without sacrificing the intended benefits of automation, all while adhering to the specific regulatory framework governing Cisco enterprise solutions. The need for careful judgment arises from the potential for misconfiguration to lead to security breaches, service disruptions, or non-compliance, which can have significant financial and reputational consequences. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased implementation with rigorous testing and validation in a controlled environment before deployment to production. This aligns with best professional practices for network automation and security. Specifically, it emphasizes a security-first mindset, ensuring that any automation solution is vetted for vulnerabilities and that security controls are integrated from the outset. This approach is ethically sound as it prioritizes the integrity and security of the network, protecting sensitive data and ensuring service availability. From a regulatory standpoint, it demonstrates due diligence in risk management, a key requirement in many compliance frameworks that govern enterprise solutions. The use of a staging environment allows for the identification and remediation of potential issues, such as insecure API keys or unpatched vulnerabilities in the automation software, before they can impact the live network. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining a secure and compliant operational posture. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing the automation solution directly into the production environment without prior testing or security review is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach disregards the principle of least privilege and fails to conduct adequate risk assessment, potentially exposing the network to unauthorized access or data exfiltration. It violates the spirit of compliance frameworks that mandate secure configuration and change management processes. Deploying the automation solution with default security settings and assuming they are sufficient is another failure. Default configurations are often not hardened for production environments and can contain known vulnerabilities. This demonstrates a lack of professional diligence and a failure to adhere to security best practices, which are implicitly or explicitly required by regulatory guidelines for enterprise solutions. It also fails to consider the specific threat landscape relevant to the organization, focusing solely on the speed of deployment and overlooking potential security implications is a critical error. While efficiency is a goal of automation, it should never come at the expense of security or compliance. This approach prioritizes a narrow objective over broader responsibilities, leading to potential breaches and non-compliance. It reflects a short-sighted decision-making process that can have long-term detrimental effects. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to network automation. This involves a thorough understanding of the automation tool's capabilities, potential security implications, and the organization's specific compliance requirements. A structured methodology should be followed, including 1. Risk assessment. Identify potential threats and vulnerabilities associated with the automation tool and its integration into the network. 2. Security design. Incorporate security controls and best practices into the automation design from the initial stages. 3. Staged implementation. Deploy and test the automation in non-production environments, e.g., lab staging, to validate functionality and security. 4. Continuous monitoring. Implement mechanisms to monitor the automation's performance and security posture post-deployment. 5. Documentation and auditing. Maintain comprehensive documentation of the automation process and its security configurations for auditing purposes. This systematic process ensures that automation initiatives are executed securely, efficiently, and in compliance with relevant regulations. Question 4. During the evaluation of a new network automation solution designed to streamline device configuration and policy enforcement across a Cisco enterprise environment, what is the most critical step to ensure compliance with data privacy and security regulations before full deployment? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to identify how the automation affects data flows, security controls, and audit trails, and to validate its alignment with existing regulatory requirements. Option B. Rely on vendor-provided documentation and assurances regarding the automation's compliance features without independent verification. Option C. Implement the automation immediately to gain efficiency benefits and address any potential compliance concerns retrospectively. Option D. Proceed with a phased rollout of the automation, assuming that any compliance issues will be identified and addressed during ongoing monitoring. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to identify how the automation affects data flows, security controls, and audit trails, and to validate its alignment with existing regulatory requirements. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the implementation of automation, while promising efficiency gains, introduces potential risks to data integrity and system compliance. The core difficulty lies in balancing the desire for streamlined operations with the absolute necessity of adhering to regulatory frameworks that govern data handling and system security. Careful judgment is required to ensure that automation does not inadvertently create vulnerabilities or lead to noncompliance. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough impact assessment before deployment. This proactive measure ensures that potential risks are identified and mitigated in advance, aligning with the principles of responsible technology adoption. Specifically, it demonstrates a commitment to due diligence, a cornerstone of regulatory compliance. By systematically evaluating the automation's effect on data flows, security controls, and audit trails, professionals uphold their ethical obligation to protect sensitive information and maintain system integrity, thereby preventing potential regulatory violations. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the speed of deployment without a comprehensive impact assessment fails to acknowledge the inherent risks. This oversight can lead to regulatory failures by potentially compromising data privacy or security, which are often explicitly addressed in regulations. For instance, if the automation inadvertently exposes sensitive customer data due to inadequate security considerations, it could violate data protection laws. Another incorrect approach that relies on assumptions about the automation's compatibility with existing compliance controls is also professionally unacceptable. Such assumptions bypass the critical validation step, leaving the organization exposed to unforeseen compliance gaps. This can result in breaches of regulations that mandate specific security protocols or data handling procedures. A further incorrect approach that delays the impact assessment until after deployment is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This reactive stance means that any discovered issues, which could have been prevented, now require costly and potentially disruptive remediation. It demonstrates a lack of foresight and a disregard for the principles of risk management and regulatory adherence. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This framework should include identifying all potential impacts of the automation on data, security, and compliance, evaluating the likelihood and severity of these impacts, and developing mitigation strategies. Prioritizing a pre-deployment impact assessment is crucial for ensuring that automation initiatives are both effective and compliant, thereby safeguarding the organization from legal and reputational damage. Question 5. The evaluation methodology shows that a new Cisco DNA Center automation workflow is being considered for network device configuration. Which approach best ensures a comprehensive impact assessment before deployment? Option A. Rely on vendor documentation and assume that the automation workflow has been thoroughly tested by Cisco. Option B. Focus solely on the time savings for network engineers and assume minimal impact on other IT domains. Option C. Perform a detailed analysis of all network devices, associated services, security policies, and user access controls that the automation workflow will interact with, and consult with relevant IT and business unit stakeholders. Option D. Conduct a pilot deployment in a non-production environment and gather feedback from the network engineering team on perceived changes. Correct answer is D. Conduct a pilot deployment in a non-production environment and gather feedback from the network engineering team on perceived changes. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows a critical need to assess the impact of introducing new automation tools within a Cisco enterprise network. This scenario is professionally challenging because the rapid pace of technological advancement in network automation, coupled with the inherent complexity of enterprise environments, necessitates a thorough and proactive approach to understanding potential consequences. Failure to adequately assess impact can lead to unforeseen disruptions, security vulnerabilities, and non-compliance with operational standards. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured and comprehensive impact assessment that aligns with established IT governance principles and Cisco's recommended practices for solution deployment. This involves identifying all affected systems, processes, and personnel, quantifying potential risks and benefits, and developing mitigation strategies before implementation. This aligns with the implicit regulatory expectation of responsible technology adoption, ensuring that new solutions enhance, rather than degrade, the operational integrity and security posture of the enterprise network. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the technical implementation speed without considering downstream effects would be professionally unacceptable. This would represent a failure to adhere to due diligence, potentially leading to operational instability and increased support costs. Such an approach could also violate internal IT policies or industry best practices that mandate risk assessment prior to significant system changes. Another incorrect approach that neglects to involve key stakeholders, such as security teams or end users, during the impact assessment phase is also professionally flawed. This oversight can result in overlooking critical security implications or user experience degradation, leading to resistance, rework, and potential breaches of operational continuity. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of consideration for the broader impact on the organization and its people. A third incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or past experiences with similar, but not identical, technologies would be professionally unsound. This lacks the rigor required for a proper impact assessment and can lead to inaccurate predictions of outcomes, leaving the organization exposed to unmanaged risks. This approach fails to meet the standard of care expected in professional IT management. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a phased approach. 1. Define the scope of the automation solution and its intended objectives. 2. Identify all potential areas of impact, including technical infrastructure, applications, security controls, operational workflows, and user experience. 3. Engage relevant stakeholders from IT operations, security, development, and business units to gather input and validate potential impacts. 4. Quantify the potential risks and benefits associated with each identified impact area. 5. Develop a comprehensive mitigation and contingency plan for identified risks. 6. Document the impact assessment findings and obtain necessary approvals before proceeding with implementation. 7. Establish metrics to monitor the actual impact post-implementation and adjust as needed. Question 6. Governance review demonstrates that the current manual process for network device configuration validation is time-consuming and prone to human error, leading to potential security vulnerabilities. The IT team proposes automating this validation process using Cisco DNA Center to enforce configuration compliance against predefined security baselines. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of responsible and compliant enterprise automation within the Cisco 300-435 ENAUTO framework? Option A. Automate the configuration validation process using Cisco DNA Center but focus solely on the speed of execution, deferring any detailed review of the generated logs or compliance reports until a later, unspecified date. Option B. Develop a custom automation solution that bypasses Cisco DNA Center to achieve faster validation, as the existing manual process is the primary bottleneck and regulatory compliance can be addressed retrospectively. Option C. Implement automated configuration validation using Cisco DNA Center, ensuring that the automation scripts are developed and tested against current security baselines, and that the process includes automated logging for audit purposes, with a review by the security and compliance teams prior to full deployment. Option D. Immediately deploy an automation script for configuration validation using Cisco DNA Center to reduce the time spent on manual checks, assuming that the default security baselines within the platform are sufficient for compliance. The correct answer is C. Implement automated configuration validation using Cisco DNA Center, ensuring that the automation scripts are developed and tested against current security baselines, and that the process includes automated logging for audit purposes, with a review by the security and compliance teams prior to full deployment. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise automation, balancing the drive for efficiency with the need for robust governance and compliance. The professional challenge lies in identifying automation opportunities that not only streamline processes, but also adhere to the strict regulatory framework governing Cisco enterprise solutions, as defined by the 300-435 ENAUTO exam syllabus. This requires a deep understanding of how automation impacts data handling, security, and operational integrity within the Cisco ecosystem, ensuring that no compliance gaps are introduced. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough assessment of existing processes and their alignment with the regulatory framework before implementing automation. This proactive stance ensures that automation efforts are directed towards areas where they can deliver maximum value without compromising compliance. By focusing on identifying redundant manual tasks and potential bottlenecks that can be addressed through automation, while simultaneously verifying that the proposed solutions meet all regulatory requirements for data integrity, access control, and auditability, this approach fosters a secure and compliant automated environment. This aligns with the principles of responsible technology adoption and risk management inherent in enterprise solutions. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on speed of deployment, without considering the regulatory implications, would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to the introduction of automated processes that inadvertently violate data privacy regulations, compromise security protocols, or create unmanageable audit trails. Such failures could result in significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Another incorrect approach that neglects to involve relevant stakeholders, such as compliance officers or security teams, during the automation design phase, risks overlooking critical requirements. This oversight can lead to the implementation of solutions that are technically functional but fail to meet the broader organizational and regulatory obligations, creating a compliance gap that is difficult and costly to rectify. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a phased approach. First, a comprehensive understanding of the current process and its regulatory context. Second, identification of automation opportunities that align with business objectives and compliance mandates. Third, a detailed design and validation phase where proposed automation solutions are rigorously tested against regulatory requirements. And finally, a controlled deployment with ongoing monitoring and auditing to ensure continued compliance and operational effectiveness. This structured methodology ensures that automation initiatives are both innovative and responsible. Question 7. Regulatory review indicates that the deployment of new network automation solutions must strictly adhere to established data privacy and security compliance frameworks. A project team is tasked with automating the provisioning of network services, which involves handling sensitive customer data. What is the most professionally responsible approach to ensure compliance and security during this automation deployment? Option A. Automate the network service provisioning without a detailed analysis of the specific customer data being processed, relying on general security best practices. Option B. Implement the automation solution with a phased rollout, incorporating automated security checks and compliance validation gates at each stage of deployment, and conduct post-deployment audits. Option C. Deploy the automation solution immediately to realize efficiency gains and address any security or compliance issues that arise subsequently. Option D. Utilize the default security configurations provided by the automation vendor, without internal review or customization, to meet specific organizational compliance needs. The correct answer is B. Implement the automation solution with a phased rollout, incorporating automated security checks and compliance validation gates at each stage of deployment, and conduct post-deployment audits. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in balancing the need for rapid network automation deployment with the imperative of adhering to established security and compliance frameworks. The pressure to deliver a functional solution quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise long-term security posture and regulatory adherence. The core challenge lies in ensuring that automated solutions, while efficient, do not introduce new vulnerabilities or violate existing data handling policies, especially when dealing with sensitive enterprise data. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a phased rollout with rigorous testing and validation against defined security policies and compliance requirements. This aligns with best practices in IT governance and risk management, which mandate that new technologies and automation solutions undergo thorough review before full deployment. Specifically, it reflects a commitment to a security by design and compliance by design philosophy. By integrating security and compliance checks into the automation workflow itself, the organization ensures that these critical aspects are not an afterthought, but are foundational to the solution. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of introducing non-compliant or insecure automated processes, thereby safeguarding sensitive data and maintaining regulatory standing. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that prioritizes immediate deployment without comprehensive security and compliance validation is professionally unacceptable. This bypasses essential risk assessment and mitigation steps, potentially exposing the organization to data breaches, regulatory fines, and reputational damage. Such an approach demonstrates a failure to uphold due diligence and a disregard for the organization's security posture and legal obligations. Another incorrect approach involves implementing automation without a clear understanding of the data being processed and its associated compliance requirements. This can lead to the inadvertent mishandling of sensitive information, violating data privacy regulations and internal policies. It signifies a lack of thorough planning and a failure to integrate compliance considerations into the automation design phase. Finally, an approach that relies solely on vendor-provided security defaults without internal validation and customization is also professionally unsound. While vendors offer security features, they are often generic and may not fully address the specific compliance needs or threat landscape of the organization. Failing to tailor and verify these settings represents an abdication of responsibility for ensuring the security and compliance of the deployed solution. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes a risk-based approach to automation. This involves 1. Understanding the scope and impact of the automation, particularly concerning data sensitivity and regulatory requirements. 2. Identifying potential security and compliance risks associated with the proposed automation. 3. Designing and implementing the automation with security and compliance controls embedded from the outset. 4. Conducting thorough testing and validation against defined policies and regulations. 5. Establishing a continuous monitoring and auditing process to ensure ongoing adherence. This structured approach ensures that automation initiatives deliver efficiency gains without compromising security or compliance. Question 8. The audit findings indicate that the automated network provisioning system has been configured to allow any authenticated user to initiate and approve network changes without granular oversight, leading to an increased risk of unauthorized modifications and potential service disruptions. Option A. Implement a role-based access control (RBAC) system within the automation platform to enforce the principle of least privilege, ensuring that only authorized personnel can initiate and approve specific types of network changes. Option B. Grant the automation service account full administrative privileges across all network devices to simplify script execution and eliminate potential access roadblocks. Option C. Rely solely on network segmentation to isolate the automation platform from other network segments, assuming this provides sufficient security for provisioning operations. Option D. Disable all authentication and authorization checks within the automation scripts to allow for the fastest possible network provisioning. The correct answer is A. Implement a role-based access control (RBAC) system within the automation platform to enforce the principle of least privilege, ensuring that only authorized personnel can initiate and approve specific types of network changes. Explanation: the audit findings indicate a potential security vulnerability in the automated network provisioning process. The challenge lies in balancing the need for rapid deployment of network services with the imperative to maintain robust security controls and compliance with Cisco's recommended practices for the 300-435 ENAUTO exam. This scenario requires a deep understanding of automation principles, security best practices, and the implications of deviating from established frameworks. The correct approach involves implementing a secure, role-based access control (RBAC) mechanism within the automation platform that strictly enforces the principle of least privilege. This ensures that only authorized personnel can initiate or approve changes, and that automation scripts themselves operate with the minimum necessary permissions. This aligns with general IT security best practices and the implicit security considerations within Cisco's automation solutions, which emphasize secure design and operation. By enforcing RBAC, the organization mitigates the risk of unauthorized access or accidental misconfiguration, thereby enhancing the overall security posture and auditability of the automated processes. An incorrect approach would be to disable or bypass the authentication and authorization checks within the automation scripts to expedite provisioning. This directly violates fundamental security principles and creates a significant risk of unauthorized access, malicious manipulation of network configurations, and potential data breaches. Such an action would be considered a severe regulatory and ethical failure, as it prioritizes speed over security and compliance, leaving the network vulnerable to attack and undermining trust in the automated systems. Another incorrect approach would be to grant broad administrative privileges to the automation service account without granular controls. While this might simplify script execution, it creates an overly permissive environment. If the automation account is compromised, an attacker would gain extensive control over the network infrastructure, leading to widespread damage. This represents a failure to adhere to the principle of least privilege, a cornerstone of secure system design, and would be viewed as a significant security lapse during an audit. A third incorrect approach would be to rely solely on network segmentation to isolate the automation platform, without implementing robust access controls at the application level. While network segmentation is a valuable security control, it is not a substitute for proper authentication and authorization within the automation system itself. An attacker who gains access to the segmented network could still exploit vulnerabilities within the automation platform if access controls are weak. This demonstrates a misunderstanding of layered security and the specific risks associated with automated systems. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment of any proposed automation workflow. This includes identifying potential security threats, evaluating the impact of those threats, and determining appropriate mitigation strategies. Professionals should always prioritize security and compliance, even when faced with pressure to accelerate deployment. Consulting relevant Cisco documentation and industry best practices for secure automation is crucial. When in doubt, seeking guidance from security experts or senior network engineers is recommended. The principle of least privilege should be a guiding factor in all automation design and implementation decisions. Question 9. The efficiency study reveals that the automated provisioning of new user accounts is experiencing significant delays, impacting employee onboarding timelines and potentially creating security vulnerabilities due to inconsistent manual workarounds. A proposed solution involves developing a custom Python script to automate this process, which approach best addresses the identified challenges while adhering to best practices in network automation and security. Option A. Implement a solution that automates user account creation but omits detailed logging and error handling to expedite deployment. Option B. Manually provision user accounts for all new employees until a more robust, long-term solution can be identified, accepting the current inefficiencies. Option C. Develop a custom Python script that leverages Cisco DNA Center APIs to interact with the identity management system, ensuring centralized policy enforcement and auditability. Option D. Create a series of independent, ad hoc scripts that directly modify user account configurations on individual servers without central management. The correct answer is C. Develop a custom Python script that leverages Cisco DNA Center APIs to interact with the identity management system, ensuring centralized policy enforcement and auditability. Explanation: The efficiency study reveals a significant bottleneck in the network's automated provisioning of new user accounts, leading to delays in onboarding and potential security risks if manual processes are used inconsistently. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for operational efficiency with the long-term implications of security, compliance, and user experience. The pressure to resolve the bottleneck quickly might tempt a hasty, less secure solution. The correct approach involves leveraging Cisco's DNA Center APIs to develop a custom Python script that integrates with the existing identity management system. This approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the automation gap identified in the study. Utilizing APIs ensures that the automation adheres to established network policies and security configurations managed by DNA Center. Furthermore, developing a custom script allows for granular control over the provisioning process, enabling the implementation of robust error handling, logging, and auditing mechanisms. This aligns with the principles of secure and compliant network automation, ensuring that all provisioning actions are traceable and meet organizational security standards. The use of established automation tools and APIs also promotes maintainability and scalability of the solution. An incorrect approach would be to bypass DNA Center and directly script changes to individual network devices, or to rely on manual, ad hoc scripts that are not centrally managed or audited. This represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Bypassing DNA Center undermines the centralized control and visibility that are crucial for maintaining a secure and compliant network infrastructure. Ad hoc, unmanaged scripts introduce a high risk of configuration drift, security vulnerabilities, and non-compliance with data privacy regulations, e.g., GDPR if applicable to the jurisdiction, though for this exam we focus on general best practices in automation without specific country mandates. Such an approach would likely violate internal IT policies and potentially external regulatory requirements related to data security and access control, as it lacks the necessary audit trails and standardized security practices. Another incorrect approach would be to implement a solution that does not include comprehensive error handling and logging. This would be a failure in professional diligence. Without proper error handling, provisioning failures could go unnoticed, leading to inconsistent user access and potential security breaches. The absence of detailed logging would make it impossible to audit the provisioning process, which is a critical requirement for compliance and incident response. This lack of accountability and transparency is professionally unacceptable. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment of any proposed automation solution. This includes evaluating its impact on security, compliance, scalability, and maintainability. Professionals should prioritize solutions that leverage existing management platforms like Cisco DNA Center and adhere to established API-driven automation frameworks. Documentation, testing, and a clear rollback strategy are essential components of any automation project. Furthermore, understanding the organization's specific compliance obligations and security policies is paramount before implementing any changes. Question 10. Implementation of network automation using Cisco telemetry data raises ethical considerations regarding data privacy. If a network engineer discovers that the telemetry data collected for optimizing network performance through automation scripts inadvertently contains sensitive customer information, what is the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action? Option A. Continue using the telemetry data for automation as the primary goal is network optimization, and the sensitive information is not the intended target of the automation scripts. Option B. Immediately cease the collection and processing of the telemetry data, conduct a thorough audit to identify the scope of the sensitive information exposure, and implement robust anonymization techniques before resuming any automation processes that rely on this data, while also informing relevant stakeholders about the incident and the corrective actions being taken. Option C. Anonymize the data only if it becomes a significant impediment to the automation process. Otherwise, proceed with the current data collection and processing methods. Option D. Assume that the sensitive information within the telemetry data is sufficiently obscured by aggregation and does not require further action, as long as the automation scripts are designed to only extract performance metrics. The correct answer is B. Immediately cease the collection and processing of the telemetry data, conduct a thorough audit to identify the scope of the sensitive information exposure, and implement robust anonymization techniques before resuming any automation processes that rely on this data, while also informing relevant stakeholders about the incident and the corrective actions being taken. Explanation. The scenario presents an ethical dilemma concerning data privacy and security within the context of automating Cisco enterprise solutions, specifically focusing on the use of network telemetry data. The challenge lies in balancing the benefits of automation and enhanced network visibility derived from telemetry with the potential risks of unauthorized access or misuse of sensitive information. Professionals must navigate this by adhering strictly to data protection regulations and ethical guidelines. The correct approach prioritizes explicit consent and anonymization of data before its use in automation scripts and analytics. This aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, ensuring that only necessary data is collected and processed for clearly defined purposes. By obtaining consent and anonymizing data, the organization upholds its commitment to privacy, builds trust with stakeholders, and complies with regulatory frameworks that mandate data protection. This proactive stance mitigates legal risks and demonstrates a strong ethical foundation in automation practices. An incorrect approach that involves using raw, unanonymized telemetry data without explicit consent for automation purposes poses significant regulatory and ethical failures. This directly violates data privacy laws, which typically require informed consent for the collection and processing of personal or sensitive data. Such actions can lead to severe penalties, including fines and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach, which is to assume that aggregated data is inherently safe and does not require further privacy considerations, is also flawed. Even aggregated data can sometimes be re-identified, especially when combined with other datasets, thus still posing privacy risks and potentially violating the spirit, if not the letter, of data protection regulations. A third incorrect approach, which is to prioritize automation efficiency over data privacy concerns, represents a fundamental disregard for ethical responsibilities and legal obligations. This can result in a breach of trust, legal repercussions, and a negative impact on the organization's standing. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a thorough risk assessment of the data being collected and processed. This includes identifying the sensitivity of the data, potential re-identification risks, and the intended use of the data. Professionals should consult relevant data protection regulations and internal policies, and if there is any doubt, err on the side of caution by seeking legal counsel or data privacy expert advice. Implementing robust data governance frameworks, including clear policies on data collection, storage, processing, and anonymization, is crucial. Furthermore, fostering a culture of ethical awareness and providing ongoing training on data privacy and security, best practices for all personnel involved in automation initiatives, is paramount. Question 11. System analysis indicates that a new customer-facing application scheduled for deployment via an automated CI/CD pipeline. The development team is under pressure to accelerate the release timeline, and there is a proposal to defer comprehensive security and compliance validation until after the initial deployment to expedite the process. Considering the need to maintain a secure and compliant enterprise network, what is the most professionally sound approach to managing this deployment? Option A. Prioritize the expedited deployment by skipping all automated security and compliance checks, assuming that the application code has been thoroughly vetted by the development team. Option B. Integrate automated security scans and compliance checks directly into the CI/CD pipeline, ensuring that all deployments are validated against predefined security policies and regulatory mandates before reaching production. Option C. Proceed with the automated deployment as planned, relying on the application's internal security features and scheduling manual security reviews for a later date to meet the expedited timeline. Option D. Expedite the automated deployment by temporarily disabling automated security checks and compliance validations, with a commitment to re-enable them once the initial release is live and stable. The correct answer is B. Integrate automated security scans and compliance checks directly into the CI/CD pipeline, ensuring that all deployments are validated against predefined security policies and regulatory mandates before reaching production. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise automation. balancing the need for rapid deployment of new services with the imperative to maintain robust security and compliance. The pressure to deliver a new customer-facing application quickly can lead to shortcuts in the automation pipeline, potentially introducing vulnerabilities or misconfigurations. The professional challenge lies in advocating for and implementing security best practices within an automated workflow without unduly hindering the development and deployment velocity. This requires a deep understanding of the automation tools, the underlying network infrastructure, and the relevant regulatory compliance frameworks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves integrating automated security checks and compliance validation directly into the CI/CD pipeline. This ensures that every code change and deployment is scrutinized against predefined security policies and regulatory requirements before it reaches production. For example, using tools like Cisco DNA Center's assurance capabilities or integrating with third-party security scanning tools within the pipeline allows for early detection of misconfigurations or policy violations. This proactive, shift-left security model is best professional practice because it aligns with the principles of DevSecOps, embedding security throughout the development lifecycle. It directly addresses regulatory requirements by ensuring that automated deployments adhere to established security baselines and compliance mandates, minimizing the risk of breaches or non-compliance penalties. This approach fosters a culture of shared responsibility for security and compliance. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to rely solely on manual security reviews after the automation has deployed the application. This is professionally unacceptable because it introduces significant risk. Manual reviews are prone to human error, are often a bottleneck, and fail to provide the continuous assurance that automated systems can offer. From a regulatory perspective, this approach increases the likelihood of deploying non-compliant configurations, which could lead to audit failures and penalties. Another incorrect approach is to bypass automated security checks for expediency, assuming that the application itself has been thoroughly vetted. This is a critical ethical and regulatory failure. Automation pipelines are designed to enforce consistency and adherence to standards. Bypassing these checks undermines the integrity of the automation process and opens the door to unintended security gaps or compliance deviations that might not be apparent in the application code alone, but are related to network configurations or access controls managed by the automation. This can lead to severe security incidents and regulatory noncompliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to automation, prioritizing the integration of security and compliance checks at every stage of the pipeline. This involves understanding the specific regulatory landscape applicable to the enterprise and mapping those requirements to automated validation steps. When faced with pressure to expedite deployments, professionals should clearly articulate the risks associated with skipping security gates and propose alternative solutions that maintain security posture, such as phased rollouts or temporary, monitored exceptions with clear rollback plans. Continuous learning and adaptation of automation strategies to incorporate evolving security threats and regulatory changes are also paramount. Question 12. Market research demonstrates that a new vendor offers a highly efficient automation tool for network device configuration that promises significant time savings. However, during the technical review, it's discovered that the tool's default configuration bypasses certain logging and auditing features mandated by internal security policies, which are themselves designed to meet U.S. regulatory compliance requirements for network activity tracking. The vendor states that these features can be re-enabled, but it would require custom scripting and potentially impact the tool's advertised performance gains. What is the most professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Reject the tool outright due to the default configuration's non-compliance with internal policies and U.S. regulatory mandates, and continue with manual configuration processes. Option B. Accept the vendor's offer to provide a custom version of the tool that includes the logging and auditing features enabled by default, without further independent verification of its compliance capabilities. Option C. Implement the tool with the default configuration, relying on the vendor's assurance that the logging features can be added later as a post-implementation project, and prioritize the immediate efficiency gains. Option D. Proceed with implementing the tool, but immediately engage the internal security and compliance teams to develop and integrate the necessary custom scripts to re-enable and configure the logging and auditing features to meet all policy and regulatory requirements before full deployment. Correct answer is C. Implement the tool with the default configuration, relying on the vendor's assurance that the logging features can be added later as a post-implementation project, and prioritize the immediate efficiency gains. Explanation. The scenario presents a common ethical dilemma in IT automation where a vendor's proposed solution, while technically functional, may inadvertently create a security vulnerability or bypass established compliance controls. The challenge lies in balancing the desire for efficiency and cost savings with the imperative to maintain security and regulatory adherence. The pressure to adopt a new solution quickly can sometimes overshadow a thorough risk assessment. The correct approach involves prioritizing a comprehensive security and compliance review before implementation. This aligns with the principles of responsible technology deployment, ensuring that automation efforts do not compromise data integrity, privacy, or regulatory standing. Specifically, in the context of U.S. regulations relevant to enterprise solutions, e.g., NIST frameworks, potentially HIPAA or PCI DSS depending on the data handled, a robust security posture and adherence to compliance mandates are paramount. This approach demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to protecting the organization and its stakeholders. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the vendor's solution without adequate vetting, especially if it involves bypassing or simplifying existing security protocols. This could lead to significant regulatory violations, data breaches, and financial penalties. For instance, if the automation bypasses logging mechanisms required by SOX or introduces unpatched vulnerabilities that could be exploited, it directly contravenes the intent of such regulations. Another incorrect approach is to accept the vendor's assurances without independent verification. This demonstrates a lack of critical evaluation and can be seen as negligent if a subsequent incident occurs. Relying solely on the vendor's claims without internal validation or consultation with security and compliance teams is a failure of professional responsibility. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that includes 1. Understanding the business need and the proposed solution's technical capabilities. 2. Conducting a thorough risk assessment, including security and compliance implications, with input from relevant stakeholders, security, legal, compliance. 3. Verifying vendor claims through independent testing or proof of concept. 4. Documenting all decisions, risks, and mitigation strategies. 5. Escalating any unresolved concerns to appropriate management levels. This systematic approach ensures that automation initiatives are implemented responsibly and ethically. Question 13. Market research demonstrates a growing demand for automated network configuration and management within Cisco enterprise environments. A team is tasked with developing and deploying a new Python-based automation script to provision VLAN across multiple switches. The script leverages Cisco's ENAUTO models and netconf for configuration. Given the critical nature of network infrastructure, what is the most appropriate approach to risk assessment for this automation script before its production deployment? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that includes identifying potential security vulnerabilities, evaluating the impact of script errors on network stability, and defining mitigation strategies, followed by a phased rollout with monitoring. Option B. Deploy the script immediately to a small subset of non-critical switches to gauge its performance and address any immediate issues that arise during operation. Option C. Prioritize rapid deployment to meet market demand, performing a post-deployment risk assessment only if significant operational issues are reported by end users. Option D. Rely solely on the security assurances provided by the ENAUTO models and netconf protocol documentation, assuming they inherently protect against all potential risks. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that includes identifying potential security vulnerabilities, evaluating the impact of script errors on network stability, and defining mitigation strategies, followed by a phased rollout with monitoring. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid deployment of new automation technologies and the need for robust risk assessment to ensure compliance and security within the Cisco Enterprise Solutions framework. The pressure to deliver innovative solutions quickly can lead to shortcuts in the risk assessment process, potentially exposing the organization to vulnerabilities. Careful judgment is required to balance innovation with due diligence. The correct approach represents best professional practice, because it aligns with the principles of proactive risk management and adherence to established Cisco best practices for enterprise automation. By systematically identifying, analyzing, and mitigating potential risks before deployment, it ensures that the automated solutions are secure, reliable, and compliant with relevant industry standards and Cisco's own guidelines for network automation. This approach minimizes the likelihood of security breaches, operational disruptions, and regulatory noncompliance, thereby safeguarding the organization's assets and reputation. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over thoroughness would fail to adequately identify and address potential security vulnerabilities introduced by the automation scripts. This could lead to unauthorized access, data exfiltration, or system compromise, violating the principle of least privilege and potentially contravening data protection regulations. Another incorrect approach that relies solely on vendor documentation without internal validation overlooks the unique operational context and specific configurations of the enterprise network. This can result in misconfigurations or unforeseen interactions between automated processes and existing infrastructure, leading to instability and potential compliance issues. An approach that neglects to involve relevant stakeholders, such as security and compliance teams, during the risk assessment phase creates a blind spot. This can result in automated solutions that inadvertently bypass critical security controls or violate internal policies, leading to ethical breaches and potential regulatory penalties. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the scope and potential impact of the automation. This involves a systematic risk assessment process that includes threat modeling, vulnerability analysis, and impact assessment. Collaboration with all relevant stakeholders, including security, operations, and compliance teams, is crucial. Documentation of the risk assessment findings and mitigation strategies should be comprehensive and readily accessible. Finally, a continuous monitoring and review process should be established to adapt to evolving threats and ensure ongoing compliance. Question 14. Investigation of a critical network performance degradation impacting customer-facing services reveals that a recently deployed automation script for network device configuration is suspected as the root cause. The script, designed to streamline updates, has inadvertently introduced a configuration loop on several core routers. The network operations team is under immense pressure to restore service immediately. The lead network engineer, without consulting the security or compliance teams, considers directly accessing the affected routers via an unmonitored SSH session to manually revert the configuration changes made by the script, believing this will be the fastest way to resolve the issue. Option A. Halt all automation script execution and await a full forensic analysis by the security team before any remediation actions are taken, even if it means extended service downtime. Option B. Proceed with manually reverting the configuration changes on the affected routers, but only after obtaining verbal approval from a senior manager in operations, without involving the security or compliance teams in the immediate remediation. Option C. Access the affected routers via an unmonitored SSH session to manually revert the configuration changes, prioritizing service restoration over immediate documentation and team consultation. Option D. Immediately revert the configuration changes on the affected routers using the automation script's rollback feature, ensuring the rollback process is fully documented, and then initiating a thorough review of the script's logic with the security and compliance teams. The correct answer is D. Immediately revert the configuration changes on the affected routers using the automation script's rollback feature, ensuring the rollback process is fully documented, and then initiating a thorough review of the script's logic with the security and compliance teams. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the desire to quickly resolve a network issue and the ethical obligation to maintain data integrity and adhere to established security protocols. The pressure to restore service can lead to shortcuts that compromise security and potentially violate data privacy regulations. Careful judgment is required to balance operational needs with compliance and ethical responsibilities. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, documented, and secure method for troubleshooting and remediation. By involving the security team and following established incident response procedures, it ensures that any actions taken are authorized, auditable, and do not inadvertently expose sensitive data or create new vulnerabilities. This aligns with the principles of responsible data handling and cybersecurity best practices, which are implicitly or explicitly supported by regulatory frameworks governing data protection and network security. An incorrect approach that involves directly accessing and modifying sensitive configuration files without proper authorization or oversight is professionally unacceptable. This action represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses established security controls, potentially violating data privacy regulations by exposing sensitive information to unauthorized personnel or creating an audit trail that is incomplete or misleading. Such actions could also violate internal company policies regarding system access and change management, leading to disciplinary action and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach, which involves making undocumented changes to the network configuration to resolve the issue, is also professionally unacceptable. This failure to document changes directly undermines the principle of accountability and auditability, which are fundamental to regulatory compliance. Without proper documentation, it becomes impossible to trace the cause of the issue, verify the effectiveness of the fix, or understand the impact of the changes on the overall system. This lack of transparency can lead to future security incidents and hinder compliance audits, as it prevents a clear understanding of the system's state and the actions taken to manage it. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured incident response framework. This typically includes identification of the incident, containment of the issue, eradication of the root cause, and recovery of affected systems. Crucially, throughout this process, communication with relevant stakeholders, including security and compliance teams, and thorough documentation of all actions taken are paramount. Professionals should always consider the potential impact of their actions on data security, privacy, and regulatory compliance before implementing any solution. When in doubt, seeking guidance from senior management or the compliance department is the most responsible course of action. Question 15. What factors determine the ethical and regulatory permissibility of automating data processing tasks on legacy systems within a Cisco enterprise solution, particularly when sensitive customer information is involved? Option A. The perceived likelihood of a data breach occurring on the legacy system without a formal assessment or consideration of regulatory requirements for data handling. Option B. Potential for automation to significantly reduce operational costs and improve system performance, regardless of the data's sensitivity or the security posture of the legacy systems. Option C. The extent to which the automation process can be configured to anonymize or pseudonymize sensitive data, coupled with a comprehensive risk assessment of potential data exposure and a clear understanding of relevant data protection regulations. Option D. The ability to implement automation quickly to meet project deadlines, assuming that the data within the legacy system is not actively being misused. The correct answer is C. The extent to which the automation process can be configured to anonymize or pseudonymize sensitive data, coupled with a comprehensive risk assessment of potential data exposure and a clear understanding of relevant data protection regulations. Explanation. This scenario presents an ethical dilemma concerning data privacy and automation within a Cisco enterprise solution. The challenge lies in balancing the efficiency gains of automation with the imperative to protect sensitive customer data, especially when dealing with potentially outdated or insecure legacy systems. The professional must navigate the technical feasibility of automation against the legal and ethical obligations to maintain data confidentiality and integrity. The correct approach prioritizes compliance with data protection regulations and ethical data handling practices. It involves a thorough risk assessment, understanding the data's sensitivity, and implementing automation only after ensuring that all necessary security controls and privacy safeguards are in place. This aligns with the principles of data minimization, purpose limitation, and security by design, which are fundamental to responsible data management and regulatory compliance. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with automation without adequately assessing the data's sensitivity or the security implications for legacy systems. This could lead to inadvertent data breaches, unauthorized access, or noncompliance with data protection laws, resulting in significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Another incorrect approach is to assume that automation inherently implies data anonymization or pseudonymization, without explicit verification and implementation of such measures. This oversight can lead to the exposure of personally identifiable information, PI, or other sensitive data. The professional decision-making process should involve a structured risk management framework. This includes identifying all data involved, classifying its sensitivity, understanding the automation's impact on data flow and storage, evaluating existing security controls, and implementing new controls as necessary. Consulting with legal and compliance teams is crucial to ensure adherence to all applicable regulations and ethical standards. Question 16. When evaluating the implementation of automated network configuration solutions within a U.S. enterprise, which approach best ensures adherence to federal regulatory frameworks governing data privacy and security? Option A. Utilize open-source automation scripts found on public repositories without performing security audits, as they are generally considered reliable and cost-effective. Option B. Prioritize automation tools that offer comprehensive logging and granular access controls, and conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify and mitigate potential compliance gaps before deployment. Option C. Implement automation without specific compliance checks, relying on the enterprise's existing security policies to indirectly satisfy regulatory requirements. Option D. Deploy the most efficient automation scripts available to expedite network changes, assuming that standard security protocols are sufficient for regulatory compliance. The correct answer is B. Prioritize automation tools that offer comprehensive logging and granular access controls, and conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify and mitigate potential compliance gaps before deployment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the technical imperative of automating network configurations with the stringent regulatory requirements of data privacy and security, specifically within the context of U.S. federal regulations applicable to enterprise solutions. The core tension lies in ensuring that automated processes, while efficient, do not inadvertently expose sensitive customer data or violate compliance mandates. Careful judgment is required to select automation tools and methodologies that are not only effective, but also inherently secure and compliant. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough understanding and integration of regulatory compliance from the outset of the automation design and implementation. This involves selecting automation platforms and scripts that have built-in security features, robust access controls, and audit logging capabilities, all of which are critical for demonstrating adherence to regulations like HIPAA, if applicable to the enterprise's data, or general data protection principles mandated by various U.S. federal laws. By performing a comprehensive risk assessment and incorporating compliance checks into the automation workflow, the organization proactively mitigates potential breaches and ensures that automated processes are auditable and defensible. This aligns with the principle of security by design and privacy by design, which are foundational to responsible technology deployment in regulated environments. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the speed and efficiency of automation without considering regulatory implications is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for data privacy and security mandates, potentially leading to violations of federal laws. For instance, automating the collection or transmission of personally identifiable information, PI, without proper encryption or access controls would directly contravene regulations designed to protect such data. Another incorrect approach that involves using third-party automation scripts without rigorous vetting for security vulnerabilities or compliance adherence poses a significant risk. Such scripts could contain backdoors, introduce malware, or inadvertently log sensitive data, leading to data breaches and regulatory penalties. A third incorrect approach of implementing automation without establishing clear audit trails for all configuration changes made by the automated system is also professionally deficient. This lack of traceability makes it impossible to investigate security incidents, demonstrate compliance during audits, or identify unauthorized modifications, all of which are critical for regulatory adherence and operational integrity. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multidisciplinary approach. First, identify all applicable U.S. federal regulations relevant to the enterprise's operations and the data being handled. Second, conduct a thorough risk assessment of the proposed automation solution, specifically evaluating potential impacts on data privacy, security, and compliance. Third, prioritize automation tools and methodologies that offer demonstrable security features and compliance certifications. Fourth, integrate compliance requirements as non-negotiable criteria in the design and testing phases of automation. Finally, establish robust monitoring, auditing, and incident response procedures for all automated processes to ensure ongoing adherence and rapid remediation of any deviations. Question 17. Quality control measures reveal that an automation engineer has proposed embedding sensitive network device credentials directly within Python scripts intended for automated configuration deployment across multiple Cisco enterprise devices. This approach, while seemingly expedient, raises significant concerns regarding data security and regulatory compliance. Which of the following methods best addresses these concerns and aligns with industry best practices for secure automation? Option A. Store credentials in a shared network drive folder that is accessible by all users and automation processes. Option B. Store credentials in a plain text file on the automation server, accessible by the user account running the automation scripts. Option C. Utilize a dedicated secrets management solution, such as HashiCorp Vault or Cisco Key Management, to securely store and retrieve credentials, enforcing strict access controls and audit logging for all credential access. Option D. Encrypt the credentials within the Python script using a simple XOR cipher before embedding them. The correct answer is C. Utilize a dedicated secrets management solution, such as HashiCorp Vault or Cisco Key Management, to securely store and retrieve credentials, enforcing strict access controls and audit logging for all credential access. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in ensuring the secure and compliant deployment of network automation solutions within a Cisco enterprise environment. The core difficulty lies in balancing the efficiency gains offered by automation with the stringent security and data privacy requirements mandated by regulatory frameworks. Specifically, the challenge is to implement a secure method for managing sensitive network credentials used by automation scripts without compromising data integrity or exposing the organization to security risks. This requires a deep understanding of both automation best practices and relevant compliance standards. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging a dedicated secrets management solution integrated with the automation platform. This method represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the security and compliance requirements. Secrets management tools are designed to securely store, manage, and distribute sensitive information like API keys, passwords, and certificates. By using such a solution, credentials are encrypted at rest, and in transit, access is strictly controlled through role-based access control (RBAC), and audit trails are maintained, all of which are critical for demonstrating compliance with data protection regulations. This approach minimizes the risk of credential exposure, aligns with principles of least privilege, and provides an auditable mechanism for credential handling, thereby satisfying regulatory obligations for data security and privacy. Incorrect approach is analysis. Storing credentials directly within automation scripts or configuration files, even if encrypted with basic methods, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This practice violates the principle of least privilege and creates a single point of failure. If the script or file is compromised, all credentials become exposed, leading to potential data breaches and non-compliance with data protection laws. Furthermore, the lack of granular access control and robust auditing makes it impossible to track who accessed or used the credentials, hindering incident response and compliance reporting. Using a shared, unencrypted credential store accessible by multiple automation tasks or users is another critical failure. This approach completely disregards security best practices and regulatory mandates for data confidentiality. It exposes sensitive information to unauthorized access, increasing the likelihood of malicious activity and data exfiltration. The absence of encryption and access controls directly contravenes regulations that require organizations to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to protect personal and sensitive data. Hard-coding credentials directly into the automation code without any form of encryption or external management is the most egregious failure. This is a fundamental security vulnerability that exposes the organization to immediate and severe risks. It is a direct violation of virtually all data protection and cybersecurity regulations, as it demonstrates a complete disregard for the confidentiality and integrity of sensitive information. Such a practice would lead to severe penalties, reputational damage, and a loss of trust from customers and stakeholders. Professional reasoning. Professionals tasked with implementing network automation must adopt a security-first mindset, prioritizing compliance and data protection throughout the design and deployment phases. The decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying all sensitive data, credentials, keys, certificates that will be handled by automation. 2. Assessing the applicable regulatory requirements, e.g., data privacy laws, industry-specific compliance standards. 3. Evaluating automation tools and platforms for their native security features and integration capabilities with secure credential management solutions. 4. Selecting a secrets management solution that offers robust encryption, granular access control, and comprehensive auditing. 5. Implementing automation workflows that strictly adhere to the principles of least privilege and secure credential retrieval. 6. Regularly reviewing and updating security configurations and access policies to adapt to evolving threats and regulatory landscapes. 7. Ensuring comprehensive documentation and audit trails are maintained for all credential management activities. Question 18. Stakeholder feedback indicates a strong desire to accelerate the deployment of new network services to meet evolving business demands. The automation team has developed a new CI/CD pipeline for these services, but concerns have been raised about the thoroughness of automated security validation for production deployment. The team is considering several approaches to address this feedback while maintaining operational efficiency. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for rapid deployment with robust security and compliance requirements within the Cisco Enterprise Automation Framework? Option A. Develop a comprehensive set of manual security checklists that engineers must complete before each deployment, prioritizing speed by allowing exceptions for critical business needs. Option B. Implement automated security policy checks and compliance validations directly within the CI/CD pipeline, ensuring that deployments only proceed if all predefined security criteria are met. Option C. Rely on manual security reviews and post-deployment vulnerability scans as the primary methods for ensuring security, as automated checks can slow down the deployment process. Option D. Deploy the new services immediately to gather user feedback and address any security issues that arise through reactive patching and incident response. The correct answer is B. Implement automated security policy checks and compliance validations directly within the CI/CD pipeline, ensuring that deployments only proceed if all predefined security criteria are met. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise automation, balancing the need for rapid deployment of new services with the imperative to maintain robust security and compliance. Stakeholders are pushing for faster delivery, which can create pressure to bypass or simplify security checks. The core professional challenge lies in navigating these competing demands while adhering to the strict regulatory framework governing Cisco enterprise solutions, specifically within the context of the 300-435 ENAUTO exam's implied jurisdiction, which, for the purpose of this exam, is assumed to be a generic, globally recognized standard for network automation security and compliance, without referencing specific national laws. The correct approach prioritizes a security-first mindset, integrating automated security validation into the CI/CD pipeline. This aligns with best professional practices by ensuring that security is not an afterthought but a foundational element of the automation process. By leveraging tools like Cisco DNA Center's assurance capabilities and potentially integrating with third-party security orchestration platforms, the team can automatically verify compliance with defined security policies before deployment. This proactive approach minimizes the risk of introducing vulnerabilities, reduces the likelihood of costly remediation efforts, and maintains stakeholder trust by demonstrating a commitment to secure operations. This aligns with the ethical obligation to protect the organization's network infrastructure and data from unauthorized access and breaches. An incorrect approach would be to deploy the new service without adequate automated security validation, relying solely on manual checks or post-deployment monitoring. This creates significant regulatory and ethical failures. It violates the principle of due diligence in network security, potentially exposing the organization to breaches that could have severe financial and reputational consequences. Furthermore, It disregards the implicit requirement within enterprise automation frameworks to build security into the process, leading to a reactive rather than proactive security posture. Another incorrect approach would be to implement security checks that are overly burdensome and not automated, thereby negating the efficiency gains of automation and frustrating stakeholders without providing a commensurate increase in security. This demonstrates a misunderstanding of the core principles of enterprise automation, which aim to streamline processes while maintaining or improving security and compliance. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that emphasizes risk assessment and the integration of security controls throughout the automation lifecycle. This involves understanding the organization's security policies, identifying critical security checkpoints, and selecting appropriate automation tools and techniques to enforce these checkpoints. When faced with pressure to expedite deployments, professionals must clearly articulate the risks associated with bypassing security measures and propose solutions that balance speed with security, such as phased rollouts with enhanced monitoring or the development of automated security guardrails. Question 19. The risk matrix shows a high likelihood of unauthorized access to sensitive customer data and configuration drift due to automated network changes. Which automation approach best mitigates these risks while adhering to data privacy regulations? Option A. Focus on the functional benefits of automation, such as increased efficiency, and address security and compliance concerns reactively as they arise. Option B. Deploy automation scripts with broad administrative privileges to maximize deployment speed and minimize manual intervention. Option C. Implement an automation solution with granular role-based access control, RBAC, and comprehensive, immutable audit logging for all automated actions. Option D. Utilize automation tools that bypass standard authentication and authorization checks for faster execution of network tasks. The correct answer is C. Implement an automation solution with granular role-based access control, RBAC, and comprehensive, immutable audit logging for all automated actions. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise automation, balancing the drive for efficiency and innovation with the imperative of regulatory compliance. The risk matrix highlights potential vulnerabilities in the automated network infrastructure, specifically concerning data privacy and access control. The challenge lies in selecting an automation strategy that not only meets business objectives, but also adheres to the stringent requirements of data protection regulations, which are paramount in maintaining customer trust and avoiding legal repercussions. The need for a robust, auditable, and secure automation framework is critical. Correct approach analysis. Implementing an automation solution that incorporates granular role-based access control, RBAC, and comprehensive audit logging directly addresses the identified risks. RBAC ensures that only authorized personnel can access and modify sensitive network configurations and data, aligning with data privacy principles. Comprehensive audit logging provides an immutable record of all automated actions, including who initiated them when and what changes were made. This is crucial for demonstrating compliance with data protection regulations, facilitating incident response, and supporting internal and external audits. This approach prioritizes security and compliance by design, embedding these principles into the automation workflow itself. Incorrect approach is analysis. Deploying an automation solution without explicit RBAC mechanisms creates a significant security and compliance gap. If automation scripts or tools have broad, unchecked access, it increases the risk of unauthorized data access or modification, violating data privacy regulations. A lack of detailed audit logging makes it impossible to trace actions back to their origin, hindering compliance efforts and making it difficult to investigate security incidents, which is a direct contravention of regulatory requirements for accountability. Utilizing automation that prioritizes speed and simplicity over security features, such as bypassing standard authentication or authorization checks for automated tasks, introduces unacceptable risks. This approach directly undermines data protection by potentially exposing sensitive information or allowing unauthorized configuration changes. Regulatory frameworks mandate secure handling of data and controlled access, making such shortcuts a clear violation. Focusing solely on the functional benefits of automation, such as increased deployment speed or reduced manual effort, without a corresponding focus on security and compliance controls, is a flawed strategy. While these benefits are desirable, they cannot come at the expense of regulatory adherence. Ignoring the risk matrix's findings regarding data privacy and access control demonstrates a disregard for legal obligations and ethical responsibilities, potentially leading to severe penalties. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach automation projects by first conducting a thorough risk assessment, as indicated by the risk matrix. This assessment should identify potential compliance and security vulnerabilities. The next step is to select or design automation solutions that inherently incorporate security and compliance features, such as RBAC and robust logging. A phased implementation approach, with continuous monitoring and auditing, is essential. Regular reviews of automation scripts and access policies, in conjunction with legal and compliance teams, ensure ongoing adherence to evolving regulatory landscapes. Prioritizing a secure and compliant automation framework from the outset is not just a best practice. It is a fundamental requirement for responsible technology deployment. Question 20. The assessment process reveals that a network engineering team is developing an Ansible playbook to automate the configuration of firewall rules across multiple Cisco devices within a US-based financial institution. The playbook is designed to streamline the deployment of new access control lists, ACL, to comply with updated industry security standards. Which of the following approaches best ensures regulatory compliance with US financial regulations, such as those enforced by the SEC and FINRA, while leveraging automation? Option A. Deploy the Ansible playbook to automate ACL changes, and then rely on a separate manual audit process conducted quarterly to identify any compliance deviations. Option B. Automate the ACL changes using the playbook and assume that the changes are compliant as long as they are deployed quickly and efficiently, deferring detailed compliance verification to a later, unspecified date. Option C. Implement automated validation checks within the Ansible playbook itself to verify that each ACL configuration adheres to predefined compliance policies and security baselines before deployment. Option D. Develop the Ansible playbook based on general best practices for network security, without explicitly mapping the ACL configurations to specific requirements outlined in US financial regulatory guidelines. The correct answer is C. Implement automated validation checks within the Ansible playbook itself to verify that each ACL configuration adheres to predefined compliance policies and security baselines before deployment. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in network automation, balancing the need for rapid deployment and efficiency with the stringent regulatory compliance requirements inherent in enterprise solutions. Specifically, when automating network configurations, especially those impacting security or data handling, adherence to the US regulatory framework is paramount. This scenario is professionally challenging because a misstep in automation can lead to significant compliance violations, data breaches, or service disruptions, all of which carry severe financial and reputational penalties. The pressure to deliver automated solutions quickly can sometimes overshadow the meticulous validation and auditing required to ensure regulatory adherence. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a robust, auditable, and compliant automation pipeline. This involves integrating compliance checks directly into the automation workflow, using tools that can validate configurations against established security baselines and regulatory mandates, e.g., NIST, PCI DSS, HIPAA, depending on the enterprise's industry. Automated testing and validation, coupled with clear documentation of the automation process and its compliance outcomes, are critical. This proactive approach minimizes risk and ensures that automated changes are not only efficient, but also legally sound and ethically responsible, aligning with the principles of due diligence and responsible technology deployment. An incorrect approach that relies solely on manual post-deployment audits is professionally unacceptable. This is because it introduces a significant lag between deployment and compliance verification, increasing the window of vulnerability and the potential for undetected noncompliance. The regulatory failure here is a lack of proactive risk management and a failure to embed compliance into the operational fabric. Another incorrect approach, automating without understanding the specific regulatory implications of each configuration change, is a direct violation of due diligence. This can lead to unintentional breaches of data privacy laws or security standards, resulting in fines and legal repercussions. Automating based on assumptions rather than verified compliance requirements is a critical ethical and regulatory failure. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of all applicable U.S. regulations relevant to the enterprise's operations and the specific network functions being automated. This understanding must then be translated into concrete, verifiable compliance checks that are integrated into the automation scripts and workflows. Continuous monitoring and automated reporting of compliance status are essential. When faced with a conflict between speed of deployment and compliance, the framework dictates that compliance must always take precedence. If automation cannot guarantee compliance, manual intervention or a revised automation strategy that incorporates compliance checks is necessary.